It was just another Tuesday evening, the kind where the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. I had just finished a long day at work and was looking forward to a quiet night at home with my wife, Sarah. We had been married for 5 years, and while life had its usual ups and downs, I thought we were doing all right. But that evening would change everything. As I stepped into the house, the familiar scent of her lavender candle greeted me. I called out for her, but there was no response. I shrugged it off, thinking she might be in the shower or lost in a book. I tossed my bag onto the couch and wandered into the kitchen. That's when I noticed her phone lying on the counter, screen lit up. I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. It was a text message from Jake, my gym buddy. "Can't wait to see you tonight, just you and me. I miss you." The words felt like a punch to the gut. I couldn't breathe for a moment, my heart racing as disbelief washed over me. Jake, the guy I worked out with 3 times a week, the guy I trusted. My mind raced. I picked up the phone, my hands trembling, and read through the thread. Flirty messages, intimate exchanges, it was all there, laid bare in front of me. The betrayal was palpable, a heavy weight settling in my stomach. I stumbled back, the world around me fading. I felt anger bubbling up inside, a fire igniting that I had never known before. How could she do this to me? How could he? I had confided in Jake about our struggles, about wanting to improve our marriage. Now it felt like a cruel joke, a twisted betrayal by both the people I thought I could trust the most. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to lash out. Instead, I stood there, frozen, grappling with a whirlwind of emotions: shock, anger, disbelief. I felt like I was in a nightmare, trapped in a reality I didn't want to face. I thought about all the moments we had shared, the laughter, the plans for the future. They felt like a lie now, a facade hiding the truth of her infidelity. I took a deep breath, trying to regain my composure. I needed to think. I needed to process what I had just discovered. My heart ached with betrayal, and I felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through my veins. I was angry, but I was also determined. I couldn't just let this go. I wouldn't let them get away with it. The evening stretched on, and I found myself pacing the living room, replaying the messages in my mind. I wanted answers, and I wanted them now. I needed to confront Sarah, but I also needed to gather my thoughts. I couldn't let my emotions dictate my actions, not yet. I finally heard the sound of the front door opening. Sarah walked in, her face lighting up when she saw me. A smile brightened her features, but it only fueled my anger. How could she pretend everything was normal after what I had discovered? I was ready to confront her, to demand the truth. But I also knew that I needed a plan. This wasn't just about confrontation, it was about revenge. I would make sure they both faced the consequences of their actions. As she approached me, I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. The moment of truth was about to unfold, and I was determined to make her understand the depth of her betrayal. I had been hurt, but I also felt a flicker of resolve. I would not be the victim in this story. I would take control. As I stood there, watching Sarah walk toward me, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal that clung to the air like a thick fog. Her smile was genuine, but it felt like a dagger in my chest. I had to gather my thoughts about our relationship leading up to this moment. I needed to understand how we had arrived at this painful juncture. Our marriage had begun like a fairy tale. We met in college, both bright-eyed and full of dreams. I still remembered the way she laughed at my jokes, the way we would spend hours talking about everything and nothing. We shared the same interests, loved the same music, and had a mutual passion for fitness. It felt like our lives were intertwined, and for a long time I thought we were unstoppable. But as the years passed, the initial spark began to fade. Life happened: work stress, financial pressures, and the mundane routines of daily life took their toll. I had noticed some changes in Sarah. She seemed more distant, often lost in her phone or preoccupied with work. We had grown comfortable, perhaps too comfortable. I justified her behavior, thinking it was just a phase we were going through. We had talked about going to couples therapy, but the idea always seemed to linger on the back burner. I recalled the last time we had a real conversation. How long ago had that been? I couldn't remember. Our evenings had turned into silent dinners, each of us lost in our thoughts, avoiding the elephant in the room. I had tried to initiate date nights to rekindle the closeness we once had, but it always felt forced. I thought it was just a rough patch, a temporary setback. I never imagined she would seek comfort in someone else. Looking back now, I could see the signs I had missed. The late nights at the gym, the sudden urge to go out with friends without me. I had chalked it up to her wanting to maintain her independence, a healthy balance in our relationship. I had been supportive, always encouraging her to pursue her passions and friendships, but I should have been more vigilant. I should have recognized that her distance was a red flag, a warning that I had ignored. My thoughts were interrupted as Sarah approached, her expression shifting from joy to confusion as she noticed the tension in the room. I wanted to scream at her, to ask her how she could betray me with Jake, but instead I forced myself to breathe, to remain calm. I needed to be strategic. As much as I wanted to confront her immediately, I knew I needed to take a step back to gather my emotions. I could have asked her about the text messages right then and there, but I wanted to understand her motivations. What drove her to seek solace in another man? Was it a lack of love, a need for validation, or simply a desire for excitement? I needed to know what had led her to this point, to make sense of the chaos swirling in my mind. As I contemplated our past, I felt a mixture of sadness and anger. I had invested so much into our relationship, and now it felt like it was all crumbling around me. I had trusted her with my heart, and she had shattered that trust in the most painful way possible. I realized I had to confront not just her actions, but the very foundation of our relationship. Suddenly, I felt a surge of determination. I wouldn't let this betrayal define me. I would confront Sarah, but I would also take action against Jake. He had been my friend, my workout partner. I had shared my vulnerabilities with him, and he had taken advantage of that trust. The thought of him laughing with Sarah behind my back ignited a fire within me. I wouldn't just stand by and let them get away with it. I would make sure they faced the consequences of their actions. As I prepared to face Sarah, I knew I had to be clear-headed. I had to let her know that I wasn't just hurt. I was ready to fight back. I would reclaim my dignity and expose them both for what they truly were. The thought of revenge filled me with a sense of purpose. I could already envision the steps I would take, the plan I would execute to ensure they both experienced the humiliation they deserved. The confrontation loomed over me like a storm cloud, dark and heavy with impending rain. I could feel the tension in the air as Sarah's smile faded, replaced by a look of uncertainty. I needed to act, but I had to be smart about it. I had to confront her, but I also needed to formulate a plan that would ensure both her and Jake paid for their betrayal. As I watched her, I felt a mix of anger and sadness. I had loved this woman fiercely, and now she stood before me, a stranger who had shattered my trust. I could still see the girl I fell in love with, but that image was now tainted by the reality of her actions. I had to remind myself that I wasn't just angry, I was also deeply hurt. I had to channel that pain into something productive. The idea of revenge started to take shape in my mind. I thought about Jake and how he had betrayed our friendship. He had been my confidant, someone I trusted with my insecurities and fears. The betrayal cut deeper because it felt like a double-edged sword. Sarah had broken my heart, but Jake had also betrayed my brotherhood. They both deserved to feel the weight of their actions. I started to consider how I could expose them. I wanted to make sure that their affair was public knowledge, that they would face the same humiliation I felt. I envisioned a scenario where I could confront them both, perhaps at the gym where it had all started. It was a place that had once represented camaraderie and support, and now it was tainted with the stench of their deceit. My mind raced as I plotted the details. I could gather evidence, screenshots of their conversations, the timestamps of their messages. I could show everyone what they had done, ensure that their affair was laid bare for all to see. The thought of making them squirm, of watching their faces turn pale as the truth came out, filled me with a sense of empowerment. I felt like I was reclaiming my agency, taking control of a narrative that had spiraled out of my hands. But as I mulled over my plan, I also felt a flicker of doubt. Was I really prepared to go through with it? Would this path lead to healing, or would it only deepen my wounds. I knew that revenge could be a double-edged sword. I had seen it ruin lives and relationships, and I didn't want to become a person consumed by bitterness. Yet the thought of letting them off scot-free was unbearable. I decided I needed to confront Sarah first. She deserved to hear the truth, to understand the gravity of her actions before I executed my plan. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation. I needed to be calm, collected, and unwavering. I could not allow her to manipulate the situation to turn it around on me. This was about accountability. "Sarah," I finally spoke, my voice steady but laced with emotion. "We need to talk." Her expression shifted, and I could see her mind racing as she processed my tone. "What's wrong?" she asked, feigning innocence, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. I couldn't hold back any longer. "I know about you and Jake." Her face paled, and for a moment I reveled in the shock that crossed her features. It was a small victory, but it was enough to ignite the fire within me. I watched her carefully, waiting for her response, my heart pounding in my chest. "That's not what you think," she stammered, her voice trembling. "It's not like that." I cut her off, refusing to let her manipulate the narrative. "I saw the messages, Sarah. You can't deny it. You've betrayed me in the worst way possible." The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the realization dawning on her, the weight of her actions crashing down around her. I had her where I wanted her, vulnerable and exposed. But I also knew this was just the beginning. I had to make it clear that there would be consequences for her actions, and I wouldn't rest until I ensured that Jake faced them too. As she began to plead her case, trying to justify her actions, I felt a surge of determination. I wouldn't allow her to twist the narrative. I would confront Jake, expose their affair, and ensure they both faced the fallout. The plan was taking shape, and I felt a sense of clarity settle over me. I was ready to act. I looked Sarah in the eyes, the pain in my heart morphing into a steely resolve. "You've hurt me deeply, but I won't let this go unpunished. You both will face the consequences of your actions." With those words, I knew I was on the path to reclaiming my life. I would execute my plan, and I would make sure they both knew the cost of betrayal. The next few days passed in a blur of anger and determination. I could hardly focus on anything else. Every time I closed my eyes, I envisioned the moment I would confront Jake and Sarah. I had to be methodical about this. I couldn't afford to make any mistakes. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity and ensuring they both faced the consequences of their betrayal. I started by gathering evidence. I took screenshots of every message between Sarah and Jake, each flirty exchange and intimate word. My heart twisted every time I read through them, but I pushed through the pain. I needed to show them both how their actions had not only shattered my trust, but also how they had disrespected our relationship. It felt like I was preparing for battle, and I was determined to win. I also began to think about how to expose them publicly. The gym was a tight-knit community, and everyone knew everyone. I could see it now, gathering our friends, calling them out in front of everyone, making them squirm with embarrassment. The thought sent a thrill of anticipation through me. I wanted to see the look on their faces, the way they would try to deny it, only to be confronted with the truth. I decided that the best time to execute my plan would be during the gym's monthly social night. It was a casual event where members mingled, shared workouts, and caught up over drinks. Everyone would be there, and it would be the perfect setting to reveal their betrayal. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins as I envisioned the scene. The day of the event arrived, and I felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. I dressed carefully, wanting to present myself as composed and confident. I was ready to confront both Sarah and Jake, but I also wanted to ensure that I had the upper hand. I packed my phone with the evidence and rehearsed what I would say in my mind. As I entered the gym, I was greeted by familiar faces, friendly smiles, and the buzz of conversation. It felt surreal. I was about to disrupt this seemingly perfect night with the truth. I spotted Sarah and Jake across the room, laughing together, their chemistry palpable. The sight of them together ignited a fire within me, and I felt the anger bubbling just beneath the surface. I had to remind myself to stay calm. I couldn't let my emotions take control. I approached my friends, gathering them around me as I waited for the right moment. I could see Sarah and Jake glancing my way, their smiles fading as they realized something was off. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was about to happen. I felt a surge of energy as I prepared to expose them, knowing that this was the moment I had been waiting for. As the evening progressed, I finally decided it was time. I stepped onto a small platform at the back of the gym, my heart racing. The chatter died down as people turned to look at me, curiosity etched on their faces. I cleared my throat, feeling a mixture of nerves and determination. "Can I have everyone's attention, please?" I called out, my voice steady. "I have something important to share." A hush fell over the room, and I could see Sarah's expression shift from confusion to panic. Jake's face hardened as he realized what was coming. I took another deep breath, holding my phone tightly in my hand. "I just wanted to let you all know that my wife, Sarah, has been having an affair with my gym buddy, Jake." The words hung in the air like a bombshell, and I could feel the weight of the truth settling over the crowd. Gasps erupted from my friends, their faces a mix of shock and disbelief. I continued, my voice rising with each word. "I have evidence of their betrayal." I held up my phone, displaying the messages for all to see. "This is what they've been doing behind my back while I trusted them both." The room erupted into murmurs, and I could see Sarah's face flush with embarrassment. Jake shifted uncomfortably, his bravado crumbling as the reality of the situation set in. I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction as I watched their reactions. They were exposed, vulnerable, and I was finally regaining control. I looked directly at Sarah, my heart aching despite the anger. "You've betrayed me in the worst way possible, and I refuse to let you both get away with it. You deserve to face the consequences of your actions." The tension in the room was palpable, and I could see my friends processing the information. Some looked at Sarah and Jake with pity, while others shot me supportive glances. I felt a mixture of emotions swirling within me: anger, vindication, and a strange sense of liberation. I had taken a stand, and I wouldn't back down. As the whispers grew louder, I could see Sarah trying to defend herself, but her words were drowned out by the crowd's reaction. The humiliation washed over her like a tidal wave, and for the first time, I felt like I was in control of my narrative. I had executed my plan, and it felt like a weight was lifting off my shoulders. In that moment, I knew I had made the right decision. I had stood up for myself, confronted the truth, and ensured that both Sarah and Jake faced the consequences of their betrayal. But as the adrenaline coursed through me, I also felt a flicker of uncertainty. What would happen next? How would this affect my life moving forward? The aftermath of my revelation unfolded in a whirlwind of emotions and reactions. As I stepped down from the platform, I felt a mix of triumph and dread. I had exposed Sarah and Jake, but the reality of what I had done began to sink in. The gym was buzzing with conversations, and I could feel the eyes of my friends on me, some filled with sympathy, others with disbelief. Sarah was visibly shaken, tears streaming down her cheeks as she stumbled back, trying to distance herself from the crowd. Jake, on the other hand, stood frozen, his bravado crumbled into nothingness. I could see the humiliation etched on his face, and despite the anger I felt towards him, a small part of me wondered if he was feeling any remorse. But that thought quickly faded as I remembered the betrayal he had inflicted on me. As I made my way through the gym, I overheard snippets of conversations. "I can't believe this," one friend whispered. "I thought they were so happy together." Another chimed in, "How could they do this to him?" Their shock mirrored my own feelings, and I realized how deeply this betrayal had affected not just me, but our entire circle of friends. I spotted Sarah sitting in a corner, her head buried in her hands. Part of me felt a pang of sympathy for her, but it was quickly overshadowed by the anger I still harbored. She had made her choices, and now she was facing the consequences. I couldn't let myself feel sorry for her. I had to remind myself of the pain she had caused me. As I approached her, I prepared for the confrontation I had envisioned. I wanted her to understand the gravity of her actions, to see how her betrayal had affected our lives. But as I reached her side, I was taken aback by her vulnerability. She looked up at me, her eyes red and puffy, and for a moment I hesitated. "Please," she said, her voice trembling. "You don't understand. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." I clenched my jaw, feeling the anger rise within me. Wasn't supposed to happen. You chose this, Sarah. You chose him over me. I could feel the weight of my words hanging in the air, heavy with accusation. I'm so sorry, she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. I never meant to hurt you. I was feeling lost and Jake was there. I didn't know it would go this far. Her words felt hollow and I struggled to find any empathy within myself. You don't get to play the victim here. You betrayed my trust and now you want me to feel sorry for you. I shook my head, feeling the anger bubbling up again. This isn't about you. This is about the choices you made and the pain you caused me. I turned away, not wanting to see the guilt and regret etched on her face. I had to remind myself that she was the one who had shattered our marriage, not me. I couldn't allow her to manipulate the narrative any further. As I walked through the gym, I could feel the weight of my friends' gazes on me. Some approached to offer their support, while others looked at me with pity. I appreciated their concern, but I didn't want to be seen as a victim. I had taken control of my life and I was determined to move forward. Then I spotted Jake leaning against the wall, staring at the ground as if he were trying to disappear. The sight of him ignited a fresh wave of anger. I marched over, ready to confront the man who had betrayed me in the most personal way possible. Do you have anything to say for yourself? I demanded, my voice low and intense. He looked up, shame etched across his features, but I wasn't about to let him off easy. He stammered, but I cut him off. Save it. You think this is just going to blow over. You think I'm going to let you walk away from this without consequences. My heart raced as I felt the adrenaline surge through me again. You've destroyed my marriage, and I won't forget that. Jake opened his mouth to respond, but the words seemed to die on his lips. He looked around, likely realizing that the entire gym had overheard our conversation. I could see the embarrassment flooding his face, and I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. He was facing the consequences of his actions, just like Sarah. I trusted you, man. I continued, my voice steady but filled with anger. And you threw it all away for what? A fling? It's pathetic. As I turned away from him, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. I had confronted both Sarah and Jake, and I had made my feelings clear. Their betrayal had caused me immense pain, but I had reclaimed my power by exposing them. The aftermath of my actions was still unfolding, but I felt a sense of liberation that I hadn't experienced in days. As the evening wore on, I could see the ripple effects of my revelation spreading through the gym. People were talking, whispering about the betrayal, and I knew it wouldn't be long before the entire community was aware of what had happened. I had made sure that Sarah and Jake faced the consequences, and I felt a sense of vindication in that. But as the excitement of revenge began to fade, I was left with lingering questions. What would happen next? How would I rebuild my life after this? I had taken a stand, but now I had to figure out how to move forward in a world that felt shattered. The days following the revelation felt like a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, relief, and even a sense of newfound freedom. I had exposed Sarah and Jake, and while that had brought me a fleeting sense of satisfaction, it also left me grappling with the aftermath of my actions. I had taken a stand, but I was now left to navigate the wreckage of my marriage and the friendships I once held dear. In the weeks that followed, the fallout from that night became evident. Sarah and I had minimal contact, each interaction filled with tension and unspoken words. I had made it clear that I needed space, time to process everything. I found solace in the gym, but it felt different now. Every corner reminded me of the betrayal, the laughter shared with Jake now replaced with echoes of disappointment. My friends were supportive, but I could sense the awkwardness in the air. Some chose sides, while others tried to remain neutral. I appreciated their concern, but I didn't want to be the center of pity. I needed to focus on healing, on rediscovering who I was outside of my relationship with Sarah. I started to spend more time with friends who knew nothing of the situation, people who could provide a distraction, a sense of normalcy. I immersed myself in activities I had once enjoyed but had neglected during my marriage. I took up hiking, spent weekends exploring new places, and even reconnected with old friends. It was liberating to step outside of my comfort zone, to embrace life without the weight of betrayal hanging over me. But as much as I tried to distract myself, the reality of my situation loomed large. I had to confront the fact that my marriage was over. I had initially hoped that we could work through this, but as the days turned into weeks, it became increasingly clear that trust, once broken, was not easily repaired. I realized that I had to let go of the version of my life I thought I would have with Sarah. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, I reflected on everything that had transpired. I felt a mix of sadness and empowerment. I had taken control of my narrative, confronted my pain, and exposed the truth. While it was painful to accept that my marriage had ended, I also felt a sense of liberation. I had stood up for myself, and in doing so, I had rediscovered my strength. I decided it was time to formally end things with Sarah. I reached out to her, asking to meet in a neutral location, a cafe we used to frequent before the betrayal. I wanted to have an honest conversation to bring closure to our relationship. As I sat at the table, waiting for her to arrive, I felt a mix of anxiety and resolve. I knew this was a necessary step, but it didn't make it any easier. When Sarah arrived, her expression was a mix of apprehension and sadness. We exchanged pleasantries, but the weight of the situation hung heavy in the air. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts before speaking. "I think we both know why we're here," I started, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "I can't continue pretending that everything is okay. The trust is gone, and I don't think we can rebuild what we once had." Tears welled in her eyes, and I felt a pang of sympathy. "I know I've hurt you deeply," she said, her voice shaky. "I never wanted it to end this way. I made mistakes, and I'm so sorry for hurting you." "I appreciate your apology," I replied, trying to remain calm. "But it doesn't change what happened. I can't move forward with someone who betrayed my trust in such a profound way." We talked for a while longer, sharing memories of happier times and acknowledging the pain that had brought us to this moment. It was cathartic, but also heartbreaking. I realized that despite the love we once shared, we had both changed. Our relationship was no longer sustainable. When we parted ways, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had taken the final step towards closure, and while it was painful, it also felt liberating. I was ready to embrace the future, to focus on my own growth and healing. In the months that followed, I began to rebuild my life. I focused on my career, poured myself into my hobbies, and surrounded myself with supportive friends. I learned to enjoy my own company, to embrace solitude without feeling lonely. I even started dating again, taking things slowly and allowing myself to trust again, albeit cautiously. Looking back, I realized that the betrayal, while painful, had forced me to confront my own vulnerabilities and to grow in ways I never anticipated. I learned about resilience, about the importance of self-worth, and the strength it takes to reclaim one's life after betrayal. I discovered that love is not just about companionship, but also about trust, respect, and mutual support. As I continued to navigate this new chapter of my life, I felt a sense of hope for the future. I had emerged from the ashes of my past, stronger and more self-aware. While the scars of betrayal would always remain, they served as a reminder of my journey and the lessons I had learned. I realized that I was no longer defined by my marriage or the betrayal I had endured. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that I had the strength to face it head-on. Life had thrown me a curveball, but I was determined to make the most of it, to create a future filled with love, trust, and authenticity. With that newfound clarity, I closed my eyes, breathing in the fresh air, ready to step into the next chapter of my life. I had survived, and I would thrive.